Preserving our past, our present, and our future is dependent on how we protect our natural and cultural resources. Sustainable growth in land use is our only reliable guide through these complicated climate times.
I'm the executive director for the Coalition to Protect Prince William County, but really I'm just your neighbor who happens to care about where I live and the Rural Crescent and Prince William County as a whole. And I have to say that I am thrilled that we have had such a positive turnout tonight. I know that people have been feeling afraid and concerned when they look at the proposals before us, and many that you all probably were not even aware of. It is more than just the digital gateway. It is about losing the Rural Crescent as a smart growth land use tool that protects everyone. It's about the integrity of our national parks, not only the Manassas National Battlefield, but also the Prince William Forest National Park. So the threats are everywhere. And I want to make sure that people feel like they are empowered and that you are with your neighbors who care just like you about your quality of life. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot right now because I feel like I've shared with you why we're all here tonight, which is everybody cares about not only where you live, but what happens to your community and what happens to the county as a whole. And my concern, as is everybody, is what we are doing is not sustainable. It's not sustainable for the residents who live here now, and it's not sustainable for the future. And we have a right to have input into how our county grows and the community that we live in. So I have a special guest tonight because I want him to set the stage really and the tone of why we're all here. And I heard him speak at a listening session, and it was really moving to me because he is the reason why we should care. If you're here just because you care only about your home, that's not enough. You have to care about something bigger than yourself. So, with that, I'd like to introduce Thomas Keepa, and he is going to share with us how he felt when he found out that where he lived was going to be consumed with industrial blight. So, take it away.
You all hear me?
Real close to the mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
You good. You good.
My name is Thomas Keeproth, and I'm in the 5th grade at the Noakesville School. I wanted to come talk to you today so that you could see my face as one of the people that you would hurt if the proposed land changes are approved. I live in Noakesville and I've lived here all my life. The land to be zoned for industrial use borders my backyard. I want you to know how this change will affect me and many other children and families in the area. One of my favorite things to do is go on nature walks in the backyard. We like to look at wildlife and play by the creek. We like to see the green plants in the summer and the colorful leaves in the fall. We also like to see wildlife like deer, beavers, turkeys, turtles, and even bear friends. If the land behind our backyard is deforested, these animals would lose their homes. We also get our drinking water from a well in our backyard. All of our neighbors do as well. If a cement factory was built right next to my backyard, I would be afraid to drink our water or play in the creek due to the chemicals and waste. It's just not right to put factories in the middle of rural land, farms, and neighborhoods. My little sister is in 2nd grade and even she knows that. Every generation is responsible for preserving the earth for the next generation and leaving the world better than they found it. If you make the decision to destroy the farms and trees in Noakesville, future generations will lose these forests and farms forever. So if you vote to approve of this change, please know that you would be hurting me and children like me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
school board members here, I'm sorry, School Board Member Jackson and Wall, and I want to compliment them and commend them for coming tonight. All the supervisors were invited, and it is not going unnoticed that I know that Supervisor Lawson will be coming later. We also invited Congresswoman Wexton and the senators, and if you feel like you don't have representation, there is a reason why. So I want to say this very quickly. Nobody on this stage can save us. Each one of you are going to have to stand up and participate because it's going to take all of us. And on that note, I would like to introduce my dear friend, Kim Hosen, and I just have to, Kim taught me everything I know about land use. I've known her for 20 years, and she's the most amazing, talented, knowledgeable, ethical person that I know. And she didn't pay me to say that.
Hi, everybody can hear me? Okay, how about now?
Louder.
Or how about?
Closer to your mouth. Closer to your mouth.
No. How about we turn it off?
No, we can't.
Still not?
Use your angry voice.
I don't know if it's on or not.
I think you switched it off.
Okay, hello everybody. Okay. I am Kim Hosen. I'm with the Prince William Conservation Alliance, a nonprofit organization that's been working in Prince William for 20 years to support sustainable communities, promote environmental stewardship, and create opportunities for residents to act locally and participate in the decisions that affect the quality of their lives and the future of their communities. We all are so lucky to live and work in such an environmentally and culturally diverse area. Prince William is rich in natural resources. Did you know we're the only locality in the entire Chesapeake Bay watershed that spans from tidal wetlands along the Potomac River to Bull Run Mountain? We also have a protected rural area, the Rural Crescent, and together, these create a unique landscape within the Washington, Baltimore metropolitan region and surrounding areas, and that is the foundation of the county's appeal. We are here today with other like-minded organizations and citizens speaking to support preservation of our key environmental, cultural, and community assets today and for generations to come. Right now, the county is considering land use proposals that represent the largest land use change the county has considered in well more than 20 years. The Digital Gateway proposal would replace more than 2,100 acres of rural crescent fields and forests with data centers. Approximately 1,800 acres, rural crescent acres in Nokesville, are now proposed for an industrial development. The current comp plan update also proposes to double residential densities in the rural crescent and places higher densities in the rural crescent that are proposed for about 4,000 acres of villages, hamlets, and cluster development. If these are approved, the enormous loss of green space would have lasting detrimental impacts on resources, the resources that protect quality of life for everyone countywide. Prince William County is lucky to have not one, but two national parks, Prince William Forest Park and Manassas National Battlefield. Data centers are proposed at their borders of both. These are very special areas that not only provide exceptional recreation and wildlife watching opportunities, they attract more than 1 million visitors and contribute $120 million to our economy every year. The Rural Crescent is important to the quality of life for everyone from east to west. It protects 40 miles of Virginia scenic byways, significant historic resources, very cool wineries and breweries, unique agricultural uses such as goat yoga and a hydroponic farm, and the streams and wetlands that protect our groundwater and the Occoquan Reservoir, which provides clean drinking water to 40% of the region's 2.5 million population, including all of East Prince William. The Rural Crescent directs community infrastructure investments to the development area where most people live and public services are already in place. It's the county's best tool, actually it's our only tool, to manage sprawl development, and that is why East Prince William supervisors voted to adopt the Rural Crescent in 1998. The county's watershed management staff absolutely recognizes that the Rural Crescent is important, saying that the proposed tech flex classification that would allow data centers would result in a dramatic change to the land use with associated far-reaching impact to natural resources. Therefore, they say, they are recommending no changes to the comprehensive plan. Fairfax Water also submitted comments expressing strong concerns, saying that given the magnitude of the proposed changes, they strongly recommend a comprehensive study to, 1, assess the individual and cumulative impacts from the proposed development, and 2, identify opportunities to prevent water quality degradation in the Occoquan Reservoir. Citizens have also submitted strong comments in support of comprehensive studies. Prince William Conservation Alliance supports the studies and community involvement before decisions are made. I appreciate the opportunity to join you tonight for a community conversation, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
See, isn't she just fabulous? Okay, our next speaker is Elizabeth Ward. I have to read all. She's an environmental engineer specializing in groundwater contamination. So Elizabeth has an incredible PowerPoint for everyone, and I'm looking forward to everyone seeing it.
Except us.
Except you guys. We'll send you the PowerPoint.
It's an incredible PowerPoint that I cut down to 6 images. So much for incredible. Next one.
You might want to hold.
Here we are in the Rural Crescent. Maybe the last you see of it. I stole that image from Kim, actually.
Louder, please.
Okay, how's that? Better?
You might want to hold.
Just get closer to the mic. Okay, we'll try this? Yeah. Okay, so here we are in the last of the Rural Crescent. The changes that are proposed for the Prince William Digital Gateway Comprehensive Plan Amendment and the 2040 Comprehensive Plan Update will effectively remove 10,000 acres from the Rural Crescent as outlined by Kim. 4,200 for industrial and data center, and the rest of that for higher density residential and commercial. The rest of the Rural Crescent will be upzoned, higher density. That is a massive rezoning that will bring great wealth to the landowners. Land that is worth $25,000 to $50,000 an acre would magically be worth up to $1 million an acre in the case of data centers. But that windfall profits threatens the drinking water supply for all of Prince William County and the entire Occoquan watershed. There we are, Occoquan watershed. Is the source of groundwater and surface water that feeds Prince William's private wells, public wells, and the Occoquan Reservoir itself, which contains 8.5 billion gallons of water that provides, as Kim mentioned, 40% of the drinking water for Fairfax Water. And that includes Prince William. 350,000 people in Prince William get their drinking water via Fairfax Water through Prince William Service Authority. The Occoquan watershed is the most urbanized watershed in the nation, and yet We are proposing, or they are proposing, to make it more so. Next. Okay, this is what happens when you develop a watershed. Development in the Rural Crescent threatens the health of the Occoquan watershed and the very sustainability and affordability of the drinking water supply for Northern Virginia. When generally open rural land is developed, the groundwater recharge is reduced, in this case, from 50% down to 15%. Stormwater runoff increases from about 10% to 55%, washing away stream banks, flooding roads and buildings, carrying fertilizer, oil, grease, and road salt to the Occoquan Reservoir. Next. We are at a moment in time where we are practically at the limit of salinity. If you look at this slide, which I happily stole from Fairfax Water, you'll see that the salinity is increasing. That gold line is the EPA health limit. We're pretty much above it. We are approaching the taste impairment. The salinity in the reservoir has been going up over time. This is from 1980 to 2020, reaching a critical stage right now. Increased population, industry, and paved surfaces will only make it worse. The only way to remove salt is desalinization. There is no other source of drinking water to supply us. We have to use this source. The cost to add desalinization lines at Fairfax Water and UOSA, and for those of you who don't know what UOSA is, it's the Upper Occoquan Service Authority, and provides 40 million gallons a day of recycled water into the Occoquan Reservoir. We're drinking it. The estimated cost to desalinate those two sources of water are between $1 and $2 billion. This is a cost that will be borne by the ratepayers in Prince William and Fairfax. No one has solved this type of problem before, and galvanic corrosion could prove the wild card and make it far more difficult than they think. Next one. Okay, so on your left is the watershed during a wet period. On your right is the watershed during a dry period. The red is the reservoir, is the UOSA's recycled water. The yellow and blue are the streams from the watershed. The rising salt in the reservoir, primarily from the watershed runoff during the wet weather and UOSA during the dry weather. Next one. The sodium concentration in the reclaimed water, and this slide is from the OWL laboratory, the Occoquan Watershed Laboratory. They've been testing the water for 40 years. Because we're drinking recycled water, they keep an eye on it, is higher than the watersheds right now. If you add more roads, more salting, that might change. But as you can see from the slide, the Occoquan watershed, more than half of the salt content is from an unknown source. You've got the Micron manufacturing fabrication facility, you've got human waste, you've got wastewater treatment, and you've got unknown for 53%. It is believed, but not known yet, and they're looking for a grant to research it, that the blowdown from the data centers, cooling water, it's very salty, that it has been increasing the salt in the Occoquan because it's going to the sewer. Prince William County did not even consider the impact of the proposed changes to the quality, availability, and sustainability of water resources. They are required to do that under the Comprehensive Plan law. In addition, Fairfax Water has taken the unusual step to ask that Prince William County convene the Occoquan Basin Policy Board and oversee a comprehensive study of the proposed land use change and what impact it will have on water quality and quantity in the reservoir before any action is taken. The cost to restore the basin and treat the water is in the billions of dollars, and that will be borne by us, the residents who remain, not those who get their windfall profits and take their millions and leave. Let's look at this and know what we're doing before we act. Thank you.
That was really good. Scary, okay. Okay, our next speaker is Bob Weir, Town of Haymarket Councilman and local curmudgeon, and also someone who you cannot pull on FOIA and code and everything else. Bob, you're on.
Yeah, tonight the only hat I'm wearing is resident county curmudgeon. I wear that hat rather well. It's funny, I'm used to speaking in 3 minutes or less, and I've got more than 3 minutes, and I've been told I have to be short. So I'll be short. I'll be blunt, brief, and some might say brutal, while I wait for Karen to get the map up. I'm going to limit my conversation tonight to transportation, and I would suggest that most of the people, I'm going to assume that most of the people in this room have some semblance or have some sense of the development that's coming or the development that's planned, and I'm sure most of you have seen your tax bills. If you have concerns with development taxation now, wait till you see what Prince William County has coming down the pipe together. This is a map of their future transit alternatives map, essentially mass transit. Not a bad thing in theory, but in the way that they're planning to carry this out, it's impractical and, quite frankly, so fiscally irresponsible that it would bankrupt the county. If you look at the upper dotted line, that represents the orange line extension to Haymarket. Anybody been on 66 recently and seen all that construction? Yeah, there's no place for that train. Similarly, if you look here on the eastern side of the county, you'll see a blue line that loops over towards Occoquan. It does not run down 95. Principally, and that's the yellow line extension. Now, I know it makes great points at political meetings and to people's constituents to say, we're bringing Metro to Prince William to make your lives better and provide you with mass transit options. What they don't tell you is the cost and the infeasibility of that. The construction costs alone run in the tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. We don't know because of the condemnation, especially on the Route 95 corridor. The other thing they don't tell you is the operational cost. Hundreds of millions of dollars a year that the county would have to pay for VRE and or Metro. That's annually, based on how many stations you have and how much of the load enters onto the stations in the county. That's maintenance costs, that's continuing capital costs, new equipment costs, all of which we don't have the funding for in the current budget, so you can guess where the money for that's going to come from. Similarly, VRE. Again, they're proposing to extend VRE from Gainesville to Gainesville or to Haymarket. We actually have numbers on this put up by the Virginia Department of Rail last year, estimates on the cost. To extend it to Gainesville, $783 to $865 million, and that does not include the maintenance or the equipment costs. And to extend it to Haymarket, $832 to $915 million. I don't think anybody in this room believes that the county has the capacity to pay for that, at least not without taxing all of us into oblivion. Next slide, please. Okay, here we go. This is a fun one. This is the most recent draft transportation map, mobility map the county has put out as part of the mobility chapter. If you can scroll down to the bottom of it. Let's start with the elephant in the room, which is the Bi-County Parkway. The Bi-County Parkway is essentially a truckway that runs from 95 to the Loudoun County line in concept. What is the Bi-County Parkway? By definition, at the very least, it is a 4-lane divided highway with a shared use path. If you look down here at the southern end of Dumfries Road, which is 234, you will see that on the map, the county is planning to, proposes to expand it from 4 lanes to at least 6 lanes. That's in the written, it's in the written component of the map. It's also on the map itself. If you go up a little further, you'll see the blue line ends at Prince William Parkway and doesn't pick up again as you go north towards 66. What's not designated on this map is what's in the actual text of the mobility chapter. If you read the text of the mobility chapter, they also plan on expanding the 234 bypass from 4 lanes to 6 lanes, from 28 all the way to 66.
Bob, they can't hear you in the back. Put the microphone closer.
Oh, okay. So it's not shown on this map, but it's in the proposed text. Why? I couldn't tell you. Once you get to the end of the bypass, where it dead ends essentially at 66, there's another component that's not shown on this map, but is in the actual written text. And that's an expansion of 29 from Heathcote to the 234 bypass intersection. Well, anybody who lives out here knows there is no 234 bypass intersection yet. But if that intersection is built, that ties you from the existing 234 bypass widened all the way to 95, essentially to Pageland, which, as you can see here, is widened as well. There's a lot of speculation as to where the road goes from there. The county board will tell you the Bi-County Parkway is dead, but the plans for Pageland Road are, and I quote, a 4-lane divided highway with a shared use path. Sound familiar? It is the definition of the Bi-County Parkway. Whether or not it goes up Sanders Lane or not, or it goes some other, or takes some other path north, the construction costs of that are going to be insane. You'll also note that they want to widen Sudley Road from the battlefield to Route 15. Can anybody here imagine what the condemnation and construction costs of that are? And how many houses that will impact? Similar plans for going up Route 15. You go back down, they've got all kinds of things like this in the plan. The county tells you one thing, they put another thing in the comp plan. Those of you that were familiar with the Carver Road issues over the years, county has pledged, in fact I believe it was a county directive, to downplan both roads from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. Keep them at 2 lanes. They're shown as being under study again in the mobility map. If you read the text, they're proposing to widen it. What the county board tells you and what the planning office puts into their plan and what the county will probably ultimately adopt are completely opposite. Quite frankly, I don't trust anybody anymore. I don't trust the board. Sure as hell don't trust the planning department. And transportation, I trust even less than that. But I want you to consider all of this. If they have their way, and even a quarter of these roads are built, experience dictates that with that type of roadway expansion, development follows soon on. So not only do you have to pay for the infrastructure of the roads, then you've got to pay for the sewer, you got to pay for the schools, you got to pay for the new police stations, the new fire stations. Doesn't leave a whole lot of money for parks, but I guess you got to add those too, even though those are shrinking as we speak. So how do we pay for it? And who's really running the show in this county? Because it doesn't seem like it's the residents' desires, since I think the residents have been pretty clear on what they do want and what they don't want. And I think we want a better quality of life, or at least to maintain what we've got. And we're certainly not in favor of a lot of these road projects. Thank you.
did touch upon the Bi-County Parkway, but actually our next speaker, Deshandra Jefferson, is a Montclair resident, and she's an active member of the Prince William Democratic Committee. She's a former Hill staffer and communication director for a trade association, and Deshandra's going to share what her experience will be if living on the East End if these proposals are approved.
All right, I gotta be honest. Wait, can you guys hear me? Yeah. I gotta be honest, I thought it was a little later in the program, so I was still kind of working on my notes. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna take a little liberty. Sorry, but you know,
No,
3 minutes ain't enough time. So I know that I'm supposed to speak about the Bi-County Parkway, but I'm gonna go off script a little bit. The board is making some decisions that is gonna impact our county for generations. And quite frankly, you know, I have a 14-year-old boy who's 9. He's at home, being a basement troll, playing on Xbox, because that's what 14-year-olds do. But I'm also out here because I want him to have the option to live in Prince William County if he so chooses when he's an adult. And I don't know if that's going to be an option in the next 10 years with some of the decisions the board is making. So that's why I'm here tonight. I want him to be able to live in Prince William County. I want this to be a place that people choose to live. So land use is political. And I will agree that zoning can be and has been used as a tool to segregate. But I'm very deeply offended by proponents of the Prince William Digital Gateway who are using race for their own gain. I sat next to a woman at the last Board of County Supervisors meeting who had a shirt on, one of those shirts that's saying, you know, in this exclusionary zoning. You know, and I had to ask her about that. So, you know, if you really care about equity in land use, then why would you buy in an area that's supposedly discriminatory? Oh no, I bought my house 7.5 years ago so that I could flip it. My goal was to create generational wealth. Oh, okay. So, why do you all of a sudden care about exclusionary zoning? You don't. This is a ploy, it's a talking point, because you want to help push through a very controversial land use decision. It has nothing about race. It's about profit. Not about land use equity, it's about profit. So I live on the east side, and I am very concerned about the water quality. This is the water that my son and I showered in. This is the water that we drink. There have been no studies. There doesn't even seem like there's even any interest in doing a study. The fact that Fairfax County Water had to get involved, that should be frightening to us. That really should be frightening to us, because what is our county doing if the next jurisdiction over has to intervene? So looking back over my notes, I was quickly writing so I can get back on track. But I am concerned because I live in Montclair, which right now is hella bar. But we have 4 schools off of 234, which would be the connecting point for the Bi-County Parkway. 2 of those schools are elementary schools. One of them is for low-income Head Start program. There are kids who cross 234 every day, and some kids who cross early in the morning because that's where they catch their bus for the specialty programs. We already have concerns about our children having to cross a dangerous roadway. Now, what is it going to look like if you turn it into a truck route? What about the communities? The Montclairs, the Ashlands, the Four Seasons, the Brittany's, which, by the way, the Brittany is not in the Rural Crescent, y'all. Okay? I know there's a certain supervisor who has claimed it is. It ain't the Rural Crescent. But it will change our county. It will cut our county in half. It will make what for me is the road that I take to go to the Target or I go to the Lidl or that I go to my son's high school. It will essentially turn into the outer beltway. So I have real concerns. And I do want to address quickly, since I'm already going off script, when we talk about revenue, the county does need revenue, but you can't take everyone's money. What is the price for the changes, we have right now, we have developer-driven growth, not smart growth. Everyone on that board ran on smart growth. But we have developer-driven growth. What is the price of their vision for our county? For me personally, I think it's too high. And that's why I came out here. You know, we need everyone out here, not just us on the stage. I mean, we have some certain like frequent flyers here at these Board of County Supervisor meetings. But we need more people. We need more people to go to those meetings and to speak out, to make their voices heard. We need people, and I'm guilty, I'll be there, go to the Planning Commission meetings. We need more people to make their voices heard. Listen, I've gotten some arrows thrown at me because I've taken a very hard stand against a number of people in my party, people who I supported running for office, people who will no longer take my calls. And I'm kind of fighting with it. It's fun to be an outsider and an agitator, especially when you're on the side of the righteous. We need more people out there. We need more people to speak against this because this is our county, this is our home. For you who have children, grandchildren, think about the legacy that you want to leave them. You've got to fight for this. If you can't fight for your community, nothing else is worth fighting for. So thank you very much.
That was fantastic. And thank you for going off script. We appreciate that, Chandra. Our next speaker is Bill Wright. He's retired Navy captain. He's a former analyst for Homeland Security, and he is also a thorn in the side of the supervisors. And I have enjoyed getting to know Bill, and you're on, Bill.
Well, thank you. So I have some prepared remarks. It seems like for the last 5 months, my entire life has been a series of prepared remarks. As Elena mentioned, I did 25 years in the Navy and I retired. And then I did 18 years for Homeland Security and I retired. And now I'm on my third career as a rabble-rouser. I'm on the right side. And I would like to retire from that too, if the county would give me a chance, but they keep creating more material for me. So you see me every week in the letters.
No, you're good. Just put it up
Good?
to your mouth.
Oh, how's this?
Yeah.
Strangers in the morning. So at one of these days, I'd like to get out of this racket. But until that day, I'm going to be here entertaining you with, that's not yet. I have slides. This is new for me, visual aids. No, the best thing about tonight is that I don't have to finish my remarks in 3 minutes and talk like the man in the Federal Express commercial, which I do like every week. So I'm going to take a leisurely time and try to have a conversation with you about things that are disturbing to me, and I hope they're disturbing to you too. So I'm really happy to see a lot of people here tonight. And people here, I hope, that are committed to saving our county from the jaws of reckless development. And I think it's even more reckless because it's so unnecessary. And it's hard to believe that only 6 years ago, our county leadership actually had a good idea. It was called the Data Center Opportunity Zone Overlay District. Its objective was to restrict data centers to industrial areas suitable for that type of development. This completely reasonable concept held up pretty well until it was deemed an impediment to developer designs. So that's not my chart. Do you have my chart?
I do.
My charts are much simpler than this one. It says Bill Wright, we're in the neighborhood. Here we go. So, if you look at this chart, you can see that Prince William County is already on track to surpass Loudoun County as data center capital of the universe, even without the Prince William Digital Gateway. You can see that right now, the data center capital of the universe, Loudoun County, has 25 million square feet of data center capacity, 4 million under development for a total of 29. Prince William has 6.25 million operating, 27.1 million under development. That's not counting the Prince William Digital Gateway, for a total of 33. So even without this, we're well on track to surpass Loudoun County. The county, Prince William County, has articulated no end goal for data center development. So are we to believe that their appetite is unlimited? And what other priorities will be subordinate to the insatiable demand of data centers? Are our entire lives to be hostages to streaming video? Where will all citizens live, work, and play if we must all take a backseat to the relentless march of concrete behemoths? How many plans and dreams will be upended as we are elbowed aside to accommodate developer ambitions? Next chart, please. Okay, so look at this chart and ask yourself, what for? Opponents of this Prince William Digital Gateway have said all along that there is sufficient usable land in the existing data center overlay district that can be developed responsibly. Prematurely seeking data center development outside the overlay district is unnecessary when the county is in a strong position to drive a harder bargain over highly desirable properties. The county's lame marketing efforts are giving away the store and needlessly squandering our irreplaceable natural, historic, and cultural resources. So let me ask you, why would your government pursue this reckless course when there are clearly better options available? I have some suggestions for you. Number one, ineptitude. Your government doesn't come up with its own ideas, but simply considers what developers throw on the table. Two, gullibility. Your government officials are suckers for a slick sales pitch.
You're not wrong.
I didn't realize these were all applause lines, but thank you. Three, laziness. Due diligence is not performed. When the sharkskin suits tell our government not to worry about something, they don't. 4, undue influence. Moneyed interests speak louder than the public interest. And that is why you are here tonight, and that is something that we hope to turn around with your help. You should be very worried about the future of our county. Not only because of this issue, but because of what it portends for the future. The Prince William Digital Gateway is the poster child of boneheaded ideas. If the supervisors can approve a 2,133-acre industrial corridor in a critical watershed between a national park and a state forest adjacent to a retirement community over the objections of numerous subject matter experts, including their own staff, they can do anything.
Yes.
And don't kid yourself. Unless we start making more noise, they will. Okay? And the point of being here tonight is not to entertain you, but to engage you, to ask for your help, to join the fight. Because right now the water is being carried, the water is being carried by a relatively small number of people on your behalf, for your interests. We need your help to deliver the message louder and funnier. So what do? We need more and different people making noise. The supervisors are thoroughly sick of hearing from me and the small vocal nucleus that has been carrying this torch to date. Silent support is useless. They need to see, hear, and feel the depth of the opposition. It is the only thing that will move them. Write letters and emails, make phone calls, show up at meetings and comment. Write letters to the editor. I can give you a couple of pointers on that. Unless we alter the current trajectory, we will lose, and the idle will regret their complacency. Take action, and you can take control of your government. Let them know the citizens of Prince William County demand people before profits, preservation, not ruination, prudence, not negligence, smart growth, not reckless development, no to bad ideas for a fast buck, no to surrendering our sovereignty to bull throwers and bulldozers, no to the Prince William Digital Gateway. Thank you.
always entertaining, Bill. Thank you. Now, our next speaker is Vida Carroll, and honestly, just very quickly, I love the people. I mean, terrible things happen in Prince William County, terrible proposals, but the advantage is you get to meet people you would otherwise not meet, and I want to introduce Vida Carroll, who is a dedicated mom and farm homesteader. She's just amazing. Please welcome Vida Carroll.
I thought it was Vita.
No.
What Elena didn't mention is that she asked someone else to speak before me, and that person was out of town. So here I am. I'm still great. Okay, so first let me talk about the slides really quick. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I live in the Brentsville district, so a lot of you may be in the Gainesville district, but what I want to say is that there's what's happening on Pageland Lane is happening and terrible, and it is happening, by the way, unless we can mobilize, but there's a lot happening on my side of the world, which is down here in the village of Noakesville. So, which if you haven't been down there, it's a sweet little spot with farmland. And right now that blue arrow you see is a 1,900 acre industrial zoning change. So there was a few acres, a couple hundred acres of industrial zoning along the railroad tracks, and now the county wants to expand it with a strokes of a pen to 1,900 acres of industrial zoning. There's also an application in for a 277 acre data center campus along Vint Hill Road, which is wedged between two gravel roads, likely be the first of multiple along Vint Hill, requiring the road to be widened, traffic lights added in. This plan, this 1,900 acres is an industrial block directly bordering Noakesville Village, backing up to Noakesville Park, other homes, farms, located between Noakesville and the Fauquier County line. It would open up space for data centers and hard industrial uses like cement plants. Industrial developments like data centers and cement plants are incompatible with rural and residential zoning. And I'm not the only one saying that. That's by the county's own compatibility chart, okay? Data centers in Prince William County have been approved up to 75 feet in height and require massive transmission lines and new substations built to support them. Any type of industrial development in the rural area will pave over green space, permanently impacting the county's watershed, as well as rural neighbors who rely on well water and properly draining septic fields. So once you turn something into industrial land, it cannot be turned back. Like that is it. Okay, so saying no, just because there's open space there doesn't mean it should be a data center or a cement plant. And then I wanted to talk about Noakesville Village and Hamlets. So Noakesville is outlined there. She'll switch the slides, but the current draft comp land plan proposes zoning changes to Noakesville and hamlets throughout the county. So Cap Harpin, Greenwich, Brentsville, and the thought of growth of downtown Noakesville is exciting, and these hamlets are exciting. The proposed zoning changes allow for townhomes, no small area plan to keep developers in check. Yeah, there it is. And the bottom line is the infrastructure currently in place in Noakesville, Brentsville, Greenwich, Cap Harpin cannot support increase in density. Sewer, school capacity, and road traffic will all be impacted. Cluster residential development is across the rural area as well. I don't think there's a slide for it, but the CR zoning just spreads suburbia into the rural area. And the bottom line is the infrastructure cannot support it. We need to look at what infrastructure is there, what would need to be there to support this, and then who is going to pay for this. The burden of improvements will fall to taxpayers, not developers. There's no clear guidelines in place for this cluster residential zoning. It opens the door to higher density homes in rural area. Again, schools cannot sustain it. It will pull more resources to the western end of the county because more new schools will need to be built to sustain new development, and it will pull resources away from the eastern schools that need improvements while the western end keeps getting new schools. So I haven't been doing this as long as any of you, except maybe Bill. I may be, but I've been, 7 months ago we got concerned about something that was happening in our neighborhood, and now I'm here. So I'm not an expert, but I want to say, I want to live for a long time in Prince William County and raise my kids here. And I think if there's two things that me being here showcases is it's first, you don't have to be an expert in this to understand how wrong and how damaging this land plan, if it could be called that, is going to be to the county. And then second, there's a need for new voices like mine. There's a need for your voice. If you're here, you clearly care in some regard. So please email the board. Just make one thing you want to do when you leave tonight. Is that send an email? Is that call someone? Is that email the planning commission? Is that go speak? You can speak virtually. It's very easy. You only have to talk for 3 minutes or less. There's a need for people to get involved, to send emails, to attend meetings, to provide public comments, and to ask the hard questions, to look at this and realize that it's not just a cute name, Hamlet. If I can do it, you can do it, and you should do it. This is going to impact everyone in the county, so thanks.
I know you weren't the first choice. Patty McKay was the planning commissioner, but Vida was absolutely right there to step in, and I thank you. And our final speaker for the night is Frank Washington. And once again, I know it's been very stressful what has been proposed throughout the county, but I have enjoyed meeting new neighbors. And Frank is a neighbor. His family has been here for generations, and he is just such a wonderful, decent human being, and he is now the leader of the Coalition to Save Thoroughfare Town. And welcome, Frank.
Thoroughfare. Thoroughfare is a small community nestled in the rural Crescent that was established by my ancestors of freed slaves and Native Americans in the 1800s. I was born and raised in Thoroughfare. My parents, grandparents, great-grandparents were also born and raised there. My family's roots are deep within the historic rural Crescent of this county. I know firsthand what disasters can be in store when a decision for development is supposedly made in the name of progress. I saw it clearly as I watched one of my family cemeteries in Thoroughfare of over 75 graves of freed slaves and Native Americans completely bulldozed without pause, without accountability, without repercussions, without restoration, without compassion or empathy for my family or my community. I watched as they drank, danced, and partied with a live band at that cemetery just days after they bulldozed it. This was a documented, recorded cemetery with the county, supposedly protected by law. It has now been desecrated 3 additional times since that initial bulldozing, all in the name of greed and power. Other areas of the historic town of Thoroughfare have also met the same fate, or were threatened with the same fate. A devastation of pain and loss that will haunt me and my family for the remainder of our lives. But it should remain with all of you as well, because Thoroughfare is not just my history, it is part of our collective history. If this can happen to a documented cemetery within an acknowledged historic town such as Thoroughfare, imagine what it could be in store for the Pageland area and its history. We all need to be keenly aware of the importance of what will be lost with the Digital Gateway projects, simply to fulfill the financial endeavors of a select few. A collective history that includes the battlefield and the areas surrounding it where free slave and Native American grave sites are scattered throughout. Areas where they built homes and settled during the Reconstruction period. Land that was associated with the plantation. The Pennsylvania plantation, which stretched along Pageland, was owned by the same family as the Cloverland plantation that existed in Thoroughfare. Land where many families of color built several communities connected to Thoroughfare. Settlement on Pageland known as Thornton, which existed on Pageland Road, and the Marble Hill Flat Iron Corner settlement that existed in the area of Aldi Road, Marble Hill Lane, and Sudley Road adjacent to and through Pageland. These areas of post-Civil War African American communities in such close proximity to a national battlefield park also present a unique rural and cultural landscape that tells a story of one of the most significant periods of American history: the Civil War, Reconstruction, and the formation of African American communities that developed during the post-Civil War era. Developments that helped build Prince William County. This entire area of Paisley was considered a forsaken land by the Pennsylvania plantation owners. So it was allotted to free slaves who first rented in the area and then they bought. Just as with Thoroughfare, they built thriving communities throughout. The Thornton Elliott School that once stood on Thornton Lane in Paisley is where many people of color had the opportunity to learn to read and write freely for the first time. A short distance from this school stands a church, Mount Calvary. It still stands as it has since the 1800s. A church which was the heart of the Paisley communities of color. A church founded by Jenny Dean. Jenny Dean was born a slave on the Pennsylvania plantation. After the war, she and her family settled and built their home on the very land that once held them captive, but now offered them freedom. Her dream and education was nurtured on Paisley. In short, she had a dream to build an industrial school where children of color could learn a trade to better their lives. Despite much opposition, she succeeded, and the Manassas Industrial School was built, and it thrived. Many years later, it was turned into a middle school and then an elementary school. That school still stands. Jenny Dean and her family are buried at the Mount Calvary Church. Though rebuilt twice, the Sedley Methodist Church, which still stands adjacent to Paisley, was a field hospital during the Civil War for both Confederate and Union soldiers. Where do you think many of these bodies of those soldiers that died in that hospital are resting? History leads us to the conclusion that many are scattered in unmarked graves throughout Paisley, alongside the free slave graves and cemeteries that we know exist in the areas where these settlements and the plantation existed. This type of historical knowledge of an area they wish to destroy in the name of perceived progress is of vital importance, but it is only touching the surface of this area's history, especially when it comes to the cemeteries and grave sites. I have seen only minimal acknowledgement of cemeteries or graves in proposals submitted supporting the sale of properties. The Paisley area warrants more than just a casual mention of cemeteries or graves. It warrants more than just a casual overview of the historic value of the area and its historic connection to the battlefield. Based on what I had experienced and learned with my struggles with Thoroughfare, we cannot trust that a fair and equitable mentality exists among those who are pushing for changing this hallowed ground of the rural crescent to industrial. A destructive change that is unwarranted, sought primarily, as I stated earlier, to put millions of dollars in the pockets of a select few. An onslaught of greed, power, and privilege that threatens our collective history, our environment as a whole, and in many ways, our entire way of life. Life is a series of moments when we have to decide what it is we stand for, what we will fight for, where our compass of values, morality, and integrity lies. Yes, there are challenges ahead of us, but as I found with Thoroughfare, there is a power and there is strength when we come together, unified, regardless of race, religion, or political affiliation. When we realize that we are walking together daily on a common ground of history, not your history or my history, but our collective history. You see, division is truly our real enemy. If we allow them to divide us with the various rhetoric I hear being used to try and pit race against race, or the east side of the county against the west side, then that division will be our downfall. I've heard supporters say of this proposal for the digital gateway that through Paisley, that they refer to the battlefield as a place that only glorifies the Confederacy and racism. So why should we be concerned with it? They're trying to make the history of the battlefield and its connection to Paisley less significant to strengthen their stance by using the race card. They are calling the very people who have stood and walked beside me in our fight for Thoroughfare racist because they simply support preserving Paisley, which also includes the battlefield. Many of those people who stood beside me in Thoroughfare are on this stage and are in this audience today. Regardless of race or religion, they stood with us, and because of that, we were strong and we were able to withstand a lot of the attacks that we faced. But again, they are still attempting to use that race card to divide us. Knowledge, understanding, and wanting to preserve our history is not glorifying it. That history is the foundation of who we are collectively as a community. The bodies of Union soldiers, both black and white, were also scattered among the battlefield. The blood of both stained the landscape. If I were asked to make a choice, I see more elements of racism and disregard in the current destructive acts I've experienced in Thoroughfare and that I see in the proposals for the digital gateway than I do in any feelings I have regarding the history of the battlefield. It was not the Confederacy that bulldozed my family's cemetery in Thoroughfare. It was not the Confederacy that blocked our gate or our entrance to another cemetery. It was not the Confederacy that is now not allowing us to continue to bury in our active cemeteries. It is not the Confederacy that is causing my mother to lose sleep over whether or not her brother will be buried in the cemetery next to her brother. We cannot afford to allow them to use the race card to pit us against each other. I do not blame or hold anyone in this audience or this presentation responsible for something that happened over 200 years ago. I was not there. You were not there. We are responsible for what we do today. We are responsible for the actions that we do today. And I do hold the people who desecrated my cemetery responsible. That is what I deem as an act of racism. It is not me calling anyone a racist, but it is an act of racism that is in the system that they are using. And they're trying to use that same thing to divide us now. We cannot allow that. I refuse to point my finger at anyone in order to line the pockets of someone else's financial gain. For me, this is not about race. It is about fighting to protect the history and freedoms of the dead, some of which only found their freedom through death. My ancestors, your ancestors, which are our ancestors, our collective history, their freedom to rest in peace in their hallowed ground, undisturbed by data centers, widening roads, or power lines. Thank you.
That was everything. That was everything. Thank you, Simon. Right now, we do have some speakers in the audience I'd like to call up to start the opportunity for everybody to have a chance to ask questions or make comments. Kathy, if you'd like to line up first, and Jeff, and then Rob, thank you. And then it will close out with a special speaker, Cecilia, from this speaker, and then everybody can then come forward. So I just want to thank all the speakers, and the citizens' time will begin now. Can you hear me? Hello? Yeah. Can't tell. Yes. All right. Good evening. Thank you, Elena, and thanks to all the organizers of this wonderful event. You've done a terrific job, and I think people are learning a lot. So thank you to inform our community about the threats of massive development, our treasured landscapes, beautiful neighborhoods, quality of life, fragile watershed, and diminishing natural systems. The threats to our historic sites, and we are honored to be named the custodians of them, and the places we call home and work hard to achieve, where we raise our families, enjoy a well-deserved retirement, or just live a good life. When I first learned of plans to build the world's largest industrial data center corridor in our community between a national park, a state forest, and our residential neighborhoods, I thought, who does that? The answer didn't make me feel any better. In fact, it was a feeling of devastation and betrayal that to the property owners along Pageland Lane, the history of their very neighborhood and the conflict that defined our nation suddenly seemed not to matter.
but the natural beauty and environmental resources of the rural crescent no longer existed or were worth protecting, and that the area had been ruined, destroyed by their own farming and traffic. As absurd as this sounded, they had given into the insatiable desire of the data center industry for huge swaths of land along with huge payouts. And in continuing waves of cage land, from south to north, form assemblages, transforming their fear of living next to data centers into the greed of being paid millions by them. It's been an unprecedented domino effect, and the majority of our county supervisors appear somehow to favor this. So, when what seems worthy of preserving, not just for 20 years, but for eternity is threatened with the prospect of devastation, what do you do? Well, some of us decided we needed to do something big, and we knew it had to be something where the average resident could have a voice on this issue, a big voice. So we took that step and formed Prince William County's first HOA and civic umbrella organization. The HOA Roundtable of Prince William County had its first meeting on February 2nd, with 12 HOAs represented, all strongly opposing the Prince William Digital Gateway. In less than 12 weeks, we've grown to 40 HOA and civic organizations representing over 68,000 households. How did this happen so fast? Because the threat is real and unimaginable for the vast majority of citizens in this county and in this region. No one moved here to live in the shadow of the world's largest data center industrial corridor. No one. We are growing and adding more than 3,000 households in the past week and are becoming increasingly active, communicating our position to local and federal officials. We are reaching out to meet with them personally and making the positions of tens of thousands of residents crystal clear. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but the challenge is resulting in HOA and civic leaders from the shores of the Potomac to the southern boundary of Dulles Airport rising to the occasion. We invite any homeowners not part of an HOA or civic organization to join our Independent Homeowner Alliance group too, so you can have your voice heard in a big way. But we didn't get here by going it alone in Prince William. We were joined in this effort by true friends, supporters of our fragile environment, open spaces, patriots who are deeply committed to the preservation of our historic sites, and to recognize these are the quality of life elements that make our communities wonderful places to live. And they know all too well the cost of rapid industrial development for all. And so we are honored tonight to have such a friend and supporter joining us. It's now my pleasure to introduce Jeff Parnes, President of the Sully District Council of Citizens Associations, representing over 200 homeowner, community, and civic organizations. Jeff?
In 1940, the Fairfax County Federation of Citizens Associations was formed,
Put your
representing homeowners associations, even as they were 80 years ago. Of the 9 jurisdictions of magistrate districts in Fairfax County, 7 of them have district councils. Sully District is the furthest west district council in Fairfax. We border both Loudoun County and Prince William. We're interested in what happens across the boundaries, because what happens across the boundaries affects us. You go south on 28 from Fairfax to Sully, you're in Prince William. You go west on Route 50, you're in Loudoun. We form a neighborhood. Yes. 4 years ago, in 1980s, Fairfax County downzoned the Occoquan area. That was to protect the Occoquan watershed that we're talking about tonight. That downzoning didn't change the gross zoning of the area, but concentrated in areas that could be sewered when the whole area back in the 80s was not yet sewered. So Centerville became a concentration of growth, and the area bordering the Occoquan area It was unsuited and large lot development. That had been fought over the years by developers who said, hey, my lot's been downzoned, it's unfair. It was brought to the state Supreme Court, and the state Supreme Court said the county has the right and a rationale for doing this, and they kept that in court. On the other hand, developers have a long history. Residents, most of us, come and go. The Sully District Council has a land use and transportation committee that hears propositions for it. Just recently, we heard a proposition that had first been introduced in the last millennium. 1990 something, but you know what I'm saying, last millennium. The point that I'm making is, some of our residents on our committee are new, others are old, but we remember that they had been on and off for 20 years trying to get the development. Finally, they presented something we can live with, and the financial auspices are correct. Previous developments that they put forward, the dot-com revolution hurts, the 2001 hurt, the financial crisis of the late 2009 hurt. Things have gotten better, and we've improved. The point that has to be remembered is that citizens have to be vigilant over time. Developers have the time, we may not. I am encouraged and I'm happy to hear that Prince William has developed a homeowners group. You might want to think of orienting it by magistrate district and having a parent organization for the county. Because you may find that the jurisdictions by magistrate have more commonality, and the county-wide organization might be better for overall values. We support the rural present. We support the Aquapon downzoning that we have in Fairfax, and we support the Loudon downzoning west of Route 15, where that is their rural corridor. Each county has its own method of keeping their development in control. But we cannot allow that to change because of a financial interest. People always have a financial interest to get the most development on their property. For more than half of my life, I have served in the Agricultural and Forestry District Committee in Fairfax County, where where homeowners who have properties that are developed in agricultural use or forestry use can keep the property at a low agricultural zoning usage, pay low taxes, as long as they keep it in that area. If they decide to pull out, they were responsible for 8 years of back taxes that they had gotten the discount. And the county has view sheds and farms still in existence today that would not have happened without this rule. There's a statewide ordinance, and I think there are statewide ordinances in Prince William, there are statewide ordinances in Fairfax, and we have our local districts as well. In your neighboring district of Loudon, somebody ran against Claude Moore. If you remember, there's Claude Moore Park. She had that property in agricultural forestry district, and the person who ran against it said, this person got a tax exemption because they were in a tax exempt area. And the same thing with the current governor. He has enough property in Fairfax County that his property is in an agricultural forestry district. That's not a bad thing, despite what some people might want to say. We have to balance the good of the individual to the good of the community.
Thank you so much for coming and offering your support. Obviously, what we are facing here has not just local impacts, but regional and state impacts, and it's definitely a me, to the Pageland folks who are in the back taping us, to a we. And so I I'm thrilled to introduce Rob Hartwell from the eastern end of Belmont Bay because it's really important to understand that in addition to the data center blight, the residential sprawl is also going to create another problem with the Occoquan Reservoir watershed. And this idea that the board is going to protect open space, we're going to develop the rural area to save it, don't believe it. And Mr. Hartwell here has something really important to share about how you can and cannot protect open space without a conservation easement.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here this evening. My name is Rob Hartwell. I am the lesser well-known Hartwell member of my family. I was a Fairfax County Planning Commissioner. I was there back in the 90s as a planning commissioner. But my mother, Elizabeth Hartwell, was a leading environmentalist back from the 1960s. And the Mason Neck National Wildlife carries her name today. In fact, the Mason Neck National Wildlife Refuge, the Featherstone National Wildlife Refuge, which was going to be a place where the District of Columbia dumped their garbage, it was stopped at the last minute, and the Occoquan Bay National Wildlife Refuge, which borders Belmont Bay. All three of those refuges probably wouldn't be in place if it weren't for her organizing the citizens, doing what you're doing here, organizing Fairfax County Federation of Civic Associations, and Friends of Mason Neck, which was the National Wildlife Refuge area back in those days. And I followed in her footsteps to some extent. I became a commissioner on the Potomac River Commission, ICPRB. I was chairman of the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority Foundation, and just followed in her footsteps to help preserve and protect the environment. Lo and behold, I moved into Belmont Bay back in 2005 to have a view across Belmont Bay of Mason Neck, the state park, the National Wildlife Refuge of my mother's lifetime work. And Belmont Bay is a beautiful community, 1,100 homes. They did have a town center planned for Belmont Bay, and the developers had built a golf course first, which they promised would remain in perpetuity as open space. There was a proctor for that in the original development. So the golf course struggled. They didn't advertise it very well. It's interesting that when a wonderful restaurant on Occoquan Road, a 5-star French restaurant, Bistro Hermitage, wanted to move to Belmont Bay and asked for a 10-year lease, they were turned down because they were going to move into the clubhouse of the golf course that had closed. They were turned down because the developers of Belmont Bay knew what they wanted to do. They wanted to pack in another 1,400 homes into Belmont Bay, which has one road in and out for access. The critical thing going on there, and that includes two 100-foot tall apartment buildings on the water and townhouses next to George Mason University's Potomac Environmental Research Center with a 5-foot setback. It's on the other side of Belmont Bay that it really gets tricky. We have the Occoquan Bay National Wildlife Refuge there, with some wonderful buffering and trees and 2 eagles' nests there currently. And the developer's proposal stacks and packs so much development into that plan. 3-foot sidewalks instead of 5-foot sidewalks, 8-foot driveways instead of 12-foot driveways. Every single aspect of their plan that was presented to the Prince William County Planning Commission and Board contains dense development, and the setbacks for the National Wildlife Refuge were 20 feet, which would wipe out all the buffering that's there right now, existing buffering, to put in hundreds of townhomes and several hundred single-family homes along the riverfront. And it is, as a former Fairfax County Planning Commissioner, when I read the plan, I was shocked, and I commented on it. What we did was organize the community, organize a civic association, started up an old neighboring civic association next door. We're going to be pleased to participate in what you're doing in Prince William County. Thank you. And the developers started catching heat. And they thought they had this grease for the Board of Supervisors. And all of a sudden, what they had done previously and how they'd set this up was when the developers set up Belmont Bay, they set up their own development association, and then they turned over the Civic Association only after 18 years years to the local citizens. But they kept their own other association and they renamed it the Belmont Bay Conservation District. They showed up at the North Woodbridge Area Plan in October of 2019, changed the comprehensive plan to allow them to build on the golf course that they said was going to be in perpetuity as open space. Nobody from our civic association, from the homeowners association, was at that last meeting, and it was only the last meeting when this came up, when that language was slipped in. So, lo and behold, a few residents caught wind of what was going on. I had caught wind of what was going on, and the homeowners association went up in arms and opposed this development. The school board opposed the development. The Audubon Society weighed in and opposed the development. Prince William County Conservation Alliance weighed in and opposed this density in this development. And the supervisors take a little bit of notice. A few of them came out and visited us. Yesley Vega, Janine Lawson, Margaret Franklin, of course, the Chief District. We've invited Chairman Wheeler out to see it. Pete Canlin has been by to see it. And Supervisor Bodie from Occoquan. Now, I understand that some of these supervisors also campaigned on limiting growth in the rural crescent and then changed their minds. Well, we're trying to change their minds from supporting this kind of development in Belmont Bay. What I wanted to tell you is that homeowner participation, resident participation is critical. The developers held off on submitting a new plan after the county staff submitted a 96-page report that was extremely critical, called them out on everything, and especially on trying to double count their open space. They were trying to count the golf course that they were building on, the remainder of it that they weren't building on, as to the 30% open space requirement on the new development. You just can't do that. So what happened is that they knew that there was a homeowners association election coming up, which we just had two Wednesdays ago. They ran a slate of their candidates that were actually on the board of the Developers Association. And they hired a professional consultant to run a professional campaign. We had a record turnout. The citizens knew what was going on. We exposed them. We previously, in a neighborhood of 1,190 homes, only had 300 votes. We had 900 votes. 72%. We still have a battle on our hands. They're coming back and they're going to resubmit a plan. Other development going on the eastern side. And by the way, we're with you. You're not alone on this rural crescent. Prince William Conservation Alliance did a town hall for our community, and we had over 100 people participate on the Zoom call at that point, which is a record. We had another development call recently. We had 107 other residents get on this call. People are paying attention. So we won some of the early battles. We got snaked out in October of 2019. We're on to what's going on. We're with you. We want you to be with us. We're going to help out on this new umbrella association. We'll get two major associations on board, that association from the eastern part of the county. We have a Redskins Stadium planned for the eastern part of the county. Where is that going to go? We don't know. We have
next to the metro station.
Well, the commander station. I'm sorry. We have a Possum Point development that's being discussed where the old Colesbury repositories were, that one of our environmental state senators, Scott Servo, seems to be supporting. And Scott and I have promised to talk about that. I want to find out, why he's supporting that. These are rare waterfront developments and ecosystems that are fragile, and we have to pay very close attention to what's going on here. I want to close just by saying thank you for the time to come out here and speak. And I had a colleague I was a Hill Chief of Staff for several members of Congress, and we had another Hill staffer here tonight from Montclair on the Democratic Committee. I'm the Woodbridge District Republican Chairman. The environment is not a partisan issue. What we have to preserve, we can never lose. Once it's gone forever. The history, the graveyards of some of our slaves and some of our soldiers, we can't let them bulldoze these areas over anytime, and thank you all for being here, for what you're doing. We all have to join together. and
Yes.
Fix this county, fix this development, stop the development of the rural crescent the way it's being planned, and help us out in the east as well. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
That was fabulous. Thank you, Rob, for coming out, and we absolutely will. We are one county. We will not be divided, and that's the only way any of this can be solved is together. And our last plan speaker, Celia, if you'd like to go to the microphone.
Anybody hear me? Hi, my name is Celia, and I'm in second grade. I'm here to speak because I'm concerned about the rural crescent. In this school year, I had a science lesson that taught me how roots of plants and trees prevent runoff of water. With data centers, our grass and trees will be replaced with pavement, which will cause runoff and impact our drinking water and overall water supply. Plants give us oxygen and provide homes for wildlife, including necessary pollinators. Data centers will replace and destroy these benefits. It would be better if there were parks and a nature preserve for everyone to join instead of data centers. Adults have always told kids like me to look for helpers in times of a crisis. Well, we are in a climate crisis, and I am still looking for the helpers.
I know, it's like I cry at commercials. That was really beautiful. And these are the lessons that we should be teaching our children. It is not about paving it over and giving a false sense of it's either we have our environment or we have good economic development. That is not accurate. So, on that note. I'd like to invite anybody else to come up, if you'd like, to the microphone first. My friend Rich, who gave up his seat at a previous listening session. I thank him for his being so willing to share his spot.
Hi. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay, I'm going to start with just another shout out to Frank. I had no idea about all that stuff going on in this county, and your testimony alone should be enough to make any sensible person rethink an idiotic plan that they're planning. Okay, let's start with a story. It's an anecdotal story, but it'll be very relevant to what's going on. It was a CEO who was very used to having a very smart CFO, financial guy.
I can't see him from here.
And the guy quit. And he put a search on, he got the top 3 applicants. The first 2, he said, I only have one question. If you answer it correctly, you get the job. Okay, I'm ready. How much is 1 and 1? And now the guy's thinking, what the heck is he trying to trick me? But he said he couldn't come up with anything better, so he says 2. No, you're not getting the job. Next guy comes in, same question, same answer. You're not getting the job. Third guy comes in, and he says, how much is 1 and 1? This guy really pauses and thinks for a minute. He says, I'll tell you what, Ed, you tell me what you want it to be, and I'll make it that way. Now, the relevance of that story is there's so much unknown, the Royal Crescent, about these construction costs. you know, they keep publishing, in my opinion, misleading information because they don't have all the facts. Not until all critical data is in can you even begin to theoretically project costs. And even then, if you've never heard of scope creep on a project, this one is going to be the most magnificent change in numbers we've ever seen. They just don't know. So, based on this, promising dates to the Eastern District, because I think they're being fooled out there, that the needed repairs for their schools and new schools is going to come very close because we're building all this. By the time they get done, there'll be so many environmental delays, if they do it, that money will get there years after they can get it from the already zoned area that would give the Eastern District immediate relief, or very, very projectable relief in terms of how long. Okay, and that's of course, the existing area is ready to go. Okay, got my face here. Okay, by the way, remember nothing else from this presentation. Remember the CFO story when they tell you what the costs are. Okay, if both sites will offer a similar revenue, and they're picking the one that is number one, full of uncertainty and filled with controversy and does nothing else for sure but destroy the royal crescent. When there's pre-approved land that has already been approved and offers those accelerated tax relief to the Eastern District, it begs the question, who is the real beneficiary of this illogical decision? Dominion Power, who conveniently has underutilized power lines running up Pageland, are they a possible candidate? Has lobbyists from Dominion Power been courting our board? The landowners on Pageland, who represent a small percentage of our residents, they will certainly benefit from this. They have implied that their reasoning is they can't sell their farms and are stuck. Well, if they are, then they need help. So why hasn't this board looked at more modest changes to the Royal Crescent that would preserve the integrity of the crescent and not, you know, cause all this crazy controversy and give them an out? Is there a public record of these meetings that they've had with the board where they supposedly have plead for help? And why hasn't the county, the bigger question, done anything other than wait for this imploded revenue that they think they're going to get? If it's real, then the board should have taken action and made selling, if they did some modest changes that we could all live with, maybe these farmers could, you know, sell their land and move on. They don't need to be millionaires. They could probably live quite well if they sold their land to a more modestly thought out development plan. If it's not real, as someone whispered in their ear, lots of potential possibilities here. Based on the previous analogy, why hasn't any government agency at any level, county, state, or federal, not come forward to start an investigation into this crazy plan that they put out for the nation? A federal judge can put out an immediate stay order on any further development, and I'm hoping some government agency wakes up to this crazy controversy that we're all dealing with. I want to end this with two things. There are some major changes coming in data centers, okay? Brand new, crazy technology is on the horizon, we announced this year, that could obviate the building of data centers. I don't have a lot of other information, but if you want to Google Viking Enterprises, you might find some very interesting information with this new technology. finally, I'd like to end with lyrics from the song Big Yellow Taxi by Joni Mitchell. And it goes, they paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Thank you.
That was well worth waiting for, thank you. I also want to acknowledge Supervisor Lawson in the back, and also Sheriff Pelt, thank you for being here, and School Board Member Allison Satterwhite. And anybody else who'd like to come to the mic and have something that they'd like to share?
More questions?
Oh. Yes, sir?
I would like to share something with everyone.
Can you come down to the mic so we can hear you? Anybody that wants to speak on the mic, just come on down. You can line up if you want.
I will, I'll keep it short, like me. Thank you, everyone. Great stories come up on the stage today. One thing that has been covered that I think is important for all of us, we talked about water, we talked about the air, we talked about traffic, we talked about highways, but we haven't talked about the effects of electromagnetic radiation. It's very important. On December 28th of 2012, I was murdered by my own cardiac implant. When they brought me back, I became electrohypersensitive. Being in this room tonight is very difficult. Although my implant is shielded, the catheters, the tips, wire tips, the screws that go in my heart are not. I'm 100% pacemaker dependent. It's the only way that I can stay alive. I moved to Lawndale so that I could have a little bit of land, a little bit of separation from the electromagnetic radiation that we're swimming in every day, this toxic soup we can't see. I feel it. I'm the canary in the coal mine. It's affecting everyone, whether you feel it or not, down to a cellular level. The power lines are really pulled up. Now, we're going to add data centers and connect them to the power lines. The electromagnetic currents and vibrations that are going to fill our atmospheric environment is going to take a toll on all of us. The electrification of America from the start is side by side with the level of all man-made diseases, including cancer. So the more we see of electromagnetic radiation, the more of a toll it's going to take on our health. I just wanted to put that bug in your ear, do a little bit of research on your own, because just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't bad for you. So thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm from here in Gainesville. I've been involved in this effort for about the last 5 months. I've been doing extensive cost analysis on the tax revenue information. Basically, what started me was when they came out and they tried to sell this whole idea on $700 million a year after complete build out. I knew that was total bunk because they based it on Loudoun County. Unfortunately, Prince William County has a 64% tax break for data centers. That's why there's a $300 million difference between what Loudoun County would be receiving compared to what Prince William County would be receiving on data centers. They charge $4.20, and Prince William County our previous rate was like 115, and now we're up to they just threw 165. But we're still about less than half. So they went from 64% tax rate to 60%. So they get a lot more tax revenue if they simply raise the rate. And they claim they can't raise the rate because they have to compete with with these other counties. But if we are so attracted to data centers, I'm sure they would still be
able to come here even at $3, which would be another $179 million at buyout and another $2.2 billion. This thing is only being driven by the $1 to $2 billion windfall for the people on patient land. They have to sell it on, we're going to get you so much more revenue from the schools, so much revenue from the counties. They already have 25 million square feet that hasn't been yet built. We're going to have that revenue anyway. And they should really take a careful look at this before they decide to destroy Patient Lane area. It's 2 times national airport, over 2,000 acres. And once you make this decision, just like on Gainesville Crossing, they cleared 95% of it to build, we're supposed to be 50% going to these buildings. They're only doing 1 building at a time, though. So it's going to take a long time to do that to get the revenue. So we really need your help. We have an organization, Gainesville Citizens of Smart Growth, where we're going to try to get legal counsel to try to go forward with this, to make sure the county follows all the rules. And that's what we have to do. So thank you very much. And you're
Hi, my name is Jenny Becker, and I'm in the Burnsville district. I spoke many times at the board meetings. So I always say Burnsville district because we have to do that speak at board meetings. I think I'm trained now. And I speak of so many things that I want to thank everyone for speaking already, and a lot of it would just be repeating. But I think I want to say that I moved to Nokesville to be in a rural area, to move to where I feel at home. My husband and I come from a very rural part of Pennsylvania. We lived in Manassas. I found it real quick. You put the country girl in the city, but she ain't liking it. And Manassas is a city, to come from where I'm from. So Nokesville's like home. I teach at the school, and I like having a doctor, but his son goes to the school that I teach at. My realtor, his kids went to that school. It's a small town feel. What they want to do in Nokesville is going to ruin it. And it makes me sad. And it makes me want to cry, because they're going to put me in a position where I have to sell my house that I love, because I will not live in Bristol. If I want to live in Bristol, no offense to anyone who lives there, I want to move there. That's not what I wanted. We have the right to choose where we want to live. And they don't have the right to have something different. They have to listen to us. We pay for that. They need to remember that. Please come on and speak in the board.
If there's nobody on the other side, I'll take my turn here. My name's Karen Sheehan. I'm in the Gainesville district. I'm the director with Elena for the Coalition to Protect Prince William County, and I'm one of the organizers of this town hall. As I worked to pull together everything for this event, I thought a lot about what is being put at risk in our lives. If this Board of Supervisors has their way, the urbanization of every sector of Prince William County will impact many things for every resident. There is more to consider than just the promises being made. The financial costs, the loss of green space, the threats to parks, the permanent changes to our grandchildren's futures, the threats to our water and to our quality of life. But I'm going to focus on one aspect that hasn't been talked about much: noise. I have worked in and around data centers for much of my career. As program manager at Time Warner Cable, I was even responsible for the decommissioning of their data center here in Northern Virginia to a new massive facility in Colorado. I am very familiar with the power, water, cooling, and other demands of data centers. The landowners and developers stand in front of our supervisors and the residents of the county, make many promises, and claim with all their passion that data centers won't be noisy. Just a moment, I have something to share.
Server stands and cooling units in a data center. This noise is not and cannot be totally contained within the building.
That's an actual data center.
This is the ever-present crackling and hum from transmission lines and substations required to power data centers.
That's outside, under a power line.
This is the noise from the outside diesel generators that are kicked on at least once a month at a data center to make sure they are all working.
That's the outside noise of the diesel generators.
But data centers will not be the only contributors of noise in all of the proposals before us. The urbanization plans for Prince William also include multiple road widenings, the Bi-County Parkway, which they try to say is off the books, but the roads are just going to be widened and just called something else. Widening of Heathcote Boulevard to 4 lanes all the way to Antioch Road. Widening 234 Sudley Road to 4 lanes from Pageland to Route 15. Widening Route 15 to 4 lanes from Sudley to the Loudoun County line. Widening Purcell Road, widening Bears Hill Road, widening Dumfries Road, and more. Increased traffic on all these roads will generate noise, lots of noise. Audio was distributed in 2014 by the Pageland landowners who fought the Bi-County Parkway when it was resurrected there 8 years ago.
This is why we have to fight against these proposals. Our quality of life will just be gone.
Just two quick stories. You first of all don't think that we can have an impact. Look at the Loudoun County models where they shocked the nation. They stood strong against the craziness of what the politicians were doing, and they shocked everybody. But I have a customer that lives on Pageland, and he told me how heartbroken he was that he was forced to sell his land. He's got family members in Gainesville and Bristol. He built his retirement home there. He was offered $750,000. I said, well, that's a lot of money. He said, it's really not. There's no home for sale. We're going to have to move. They're giving all these people all this money. We're not going to find another place in the area. And we didn't want to move. But I was told if I don't sell now, they're going to landlock me and I have no choice. And he was forced into making a decision. The other thing that I've been having conversations with my county supervisor, someone that I work very closely with, I've had a lot of great relations with. He's been an advocate for defending the Rural Crescent. He ran on the Rural Crescent. In fact, he ran on defending Pageland. And I wrote him last week or 3 weeks ago, and I said, we have no representation anymore. Without our knowledge, you sold out on us. the leftists would have anybody to vote for us. My wife was very active in defending the asphalt plant from going up, where it was a 5-3 vote. We brought in reporters, she brought in a number of other things, everybody fought. We had one Democrat change, we went to a 4-4 vote, and it stopped it. And I wrote Pete Campbell and I said, we no longer have that option because you took the money before you gave us a chance to even fight. My question is, why has he not resigned? He's If he won't resign, we need to recall him.
Yes.
You want to win?
Before we start to close up, because I think we're getting to that time, I wanted to have everybody, Bob, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that before any more people leave, I want to recognize everybody who delivered a flyer or who volunteered. Can you all please stand up? Everybody please stand up who helped make this event happen. I actually have something for everybody on the stage. I have a rose, and I have a bottle of wine and flowers for Karen because she worked so hard to make this happen. And I wanted to just say thank you. So thank you everyone. You must participate. It is not enough to depend on other people. And if you want to protect your quality of life, you're going to have to speak up. There is no knight in shining armor, and as the gentleman said, we don't have representation. It is up to us. And you see, we have county-wide support, and we have support from outside the region, and everybody has to decide that this is worth their time to protect.
Anybody else? Before you go, I get a little myopic sometimes. You know, I'm in the weeds and I know more than I should, and I take it for granted that everybody's aware of a lot of things. And in listening to a lot of the comments tonight, I don't think a lot of people really understand just how bad we have it here in this county in many respects. Somebody just mentioned the county following the rules. Let me tell you something. This county doesn't follow the rules in anything when it comes to the residents. They don't follow the rules in FOIA. If you want to get something out of them, you've got to follow a writ of mandamus to force them to do it. You've got to school them on FOIA to get them to provide the documentation. In many cases, it involves going straight up against the county attorney's office. They don't follow. The planning office doesn't follow the rules with regard to statute. We've got a lot of small comprehensive plans involved in the overall comp plan that you're going to see revealed in a couple of weeks. The planning office has created out of whole cloth a brand new category of land use application. A comp plan, land request. There's no statutory authority for that. We're doing the whole state. The only way you get to change your land use in this county is by filing a rezoning or filing a comp plan amendment and a rezoning when that comp plan amendment is required with that rezoning. This county is out of control. It's the leadership of this county, both at the elected level and the executive level. In no other county that I've worked in have I ever seen anything as bad as this. Now, I work with a lot of land use attorneys and I work with a lot of jurisdictional attorneys. The one thing that they all have in common is their reference to Prince William County. When you ask them about Prince William County and land use, universally their response is Prince William County is the Wild Wild West. Proffers. Somebody brought it up earlier. They're going to proffer this. They're going to proffer that. You want to know how meaningless proffers are in this county? Let me tell you how meaningless proffers are in this county. Last summer, the Hunter property rezoned, did a comp plan amendment and a rezoning for a data center outside the overlay district on Linton Hall. One of the issues was the height of the height with the data center, because it backs up to 2 residential neighborhoods, Ashley Ridge being one of them. This year, not more than 6 months after that was approved by the county board, the developer for that application has filed a proffer amendment. But it's a small administrative proffer amendment. One that the planning commission will never see, one that the board will never hear, and one that will never have a public hearing for you to speak at, or more appropriately, for those who live in the surrounding neighborhoods to speak at. The proffer amendment, to increase the height. So all that proffer negotiation that the residents did, all the input that they did to get it limited to a certain height, out the window because it's going to be administratively approved by a staffer in the planning office. The same thing is happening at Youth for the Warren, raising it up to 85 feet. I could go on. There's a waiver of a proffer just filed for one of the data centers that isn't even built at the intersection of Harbin and 55, so that they can build in the easement, which is something we don't allow. And last but not least, developer assertions. Call me cynical, you can call me a lot of things. But developers and the people that they bring to these hearings and purport to give both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors facts are nothing more than paid hacks who are delivering a crafted message regardless of whether it's true or not. Elena and I spent years fighting with Dominion. As a result of that fight, we've actually established a bit of a relationship with their executive staff in Richmond. It's to the point where we can call them up and they will sit down and they will bring their lead road engineers to talk to us. Frankly, talk to us. Explain to us things like load, transmission, availability of power along certain power lines. We had a meeting just like that a couple months ago, just prior to a planning commission hearing on a data center application that was being heard that night. I invited one of the planning commissioners to be in on the Zoom call. This was the VP from Dominion Power and their chief load engineer out of Richmond. We discussed the impact of this particular data center and the requirements for power, and Dominion Power was very, very forthright in that Zoom call. What they intend to do will create the need for another power line. We went to the hearing that night. We spoke to that. The planning commissioner that was on the Zoom call confirmed it. And the engineer for the data center that was doing the application essentially told the planning commission that we were full of shit and didn't know what we were talking about, and that we were not to be given any credit because we didn't have the engineering degrees behind our name that he did. And because he had those credentials, he was right and we were wrong, and Dominion didn't know what they were talking about. And you want to know who the planning commissioners, the majority of the planning commissioners heeded? They heeded that guy. They didn't heed the people that fought Dominion for 4.5 years. They didn't heed the words of the load engineer from Dominion, who's got no skin in the game and who actually should probably underplay it, but didn't, because the guy's a straight shooter. But that's what you're dealing with. Thank you.
It is worth fighting not just for your present, but it's worth fighting for the future and for protecting the past. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
Clean drinking water from the Occoquan Reservoir, historical preservation, welcoming national parks, and a good quality of life means local government must support sustainable land use policy. Prince William County is at a crossroads. With growing opposition in the community countywide, as well as regionally, we stand united as an obstacle to greed and developer handouts that will result in the loss of our best smart growth land use, the Rural Crescent. As recently as 2016, the Pageland Lane residents advocated to protect the beauty and history of Pageland Lane from becoming a victim to expensive sprawl development. This is a 6-year-old quote from an article in Bacon's Rebellion as the fight began to stop the Bi-County Parkway. Quote, "The three amigas live on Pageland Lane because they like living in the country. While development pressure from Washington has penetrated even deeper into the Virginia countryside to the north and south, building has been limited in an area of northwestern Prince William known as the Rural Crescent. The wooded hills around the Manassas battlefield are dappled now with the yellows and umbers of autumn. The fenced-in fields beside Snyder's house are dotted with horses and geese. Her farm, where her family has lived for 6 generations, was the scene of military maneuvers in the Second Battle of Manassas, and Snyder has hosted Civil War reenactments there. Conservation is in her blood. Indeed, the Snyder name is synonymous locally with historical preservation." End quote. Fast forward to today, and the draw of big money per acre that data centers are willing to pay has those same landowners folding up their preservation tent in exchange for the promise of $1 million an acre, asking the rest of us to ignore the robust data center opportunity zone in already zoned industrial areas of the county. Proposals being put forward have industrial and data center proliferation consuming thousands of acres and spreading across the county. The mobility plans in the Comprehensive Plan Update are taking us in the wrong direction. Instead of driving less, these plans make us more car dependent. From an April 25, 2022 article in Greater Washington, the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, NVTA, will make multi-billion-dollar decisions this year on the region's transportation future. Analysis from the Coalition for Smarter Growth, CSG, finds that the agency's massive highway expansion plans would fuel increased levels of driving, on top of the additional trips anticipated from population growth. Instead of helping Northern Virginians drive less, the proposed 1,200 miles of new pavement would make the region more car-dependent. Vehicle miles traveled, VMT, would increase up to 42% on Loudoun's highway network, significantly more than the county's rate of population growth, and up to 60% on Prince William's non-interstate highways, almost 3 times the rate of its population growth. What does this really mean to everyday citizens? We pay for unnecessary road infrastructure and its maintenance to line the pockets of landowners and developers. This county is proposing stupid growth, not smart growth, by proposing data center proliferation and high-density residential sprawl in rural areas with no infrastructure. This board is incentivizing more cars and noisy truck traffic on roads. Instead of sticking to the data center opportunity zone, the Board of Supervisors has replanned for data centers, rather than good mixed-use land use opportunities for affordable housing with walkable communities, signaling that they are willing to trade data center blight for our natural and cultural resources that sustain your quality of life. Has anyone noticed the multi-million-dollar Interstate 66 project? How is Metro coming to Gainesville along there? Via a tunnel? With a price tag of billions? The future map is more than simply unrealistic. It is selling misinformation and attempting to use that to support out-of-control residential sprawl throughout the county, but especially in the rural crescent, where 2-lane roads are the transportation network. Don't be fooled by their ethereal namesake. Villages and hamlets are simply another name for mixed-use development. Housing and commercial slapped together that will incentivize sprawl growth and require costly citizen tax dollars to build and maintain infrastructure, like roads, schools, and fire and rescue. The village of Nokesville doesn't need, nor will it benefit from development sprawl, redirecting it away from the village that it already is. The Woolsey Hamlet would bring dense development along the journey through hallowed ground byway, not protecting the history, but rather eliminating it and paving it over. The Catharpin Hamlet is planned next to the Digital Gateway Data Center alley on Pageland Lane. People are literally scrambling to sell out to avoid the visual and auditory impacts of data center blight in rural areas. Greenwich Hamlet is located in a historical overlay. Once again, the premise that you pave over your natural and cultural resources belies common sense. In a time when we can ill afford to lose the remaining working family-run farms in Prince William County, The Haymarket Activity Center would destroy a 90-year-old multi-generational working farm. If this county means what it says in the sustainability goal from the Comp Plan update, quote, "The objectives outlined in this focus area are aimed at establishing Prince William County as a leader in sustainability through expansion of agriculture and agritourism, land conservation and preservation, promotion of clean and renewable energy consumption, increased focus on recycling and reuse of materials, and finally, preservation of the county's rich and diverse cultural history." End quote. This proposal is in complete opposition to that goal and plan. If one looks at the names of the developers benefiting from these land use proposals to develop high-density housing under the scheme of land preservation, you'll find the usual who's who list of suspects. The reality is that unless the promise of open space preservation includes a credible third-party land trust, just like the current threats to other saved green areas in the county that are now fighting high-density housing encroachment, there is no real land preservation. It's just more high-density housing sprawl under a fancy new name. Sustainability is not only the antidote to mitigating the impacts of climate change, but also the antidote to the division people are feeling in our communities. We are one Prince William. If we destroy our natural and cultural assets, everyone suffers. If we protect them, everyone benefits. The Rural Crescent was adopted 22 years ago as our best smart growth land use tool, when we had little idea what challenges we would be facing today. Now is the time to reinforce that forward-thinking plan, not to urbanize and pave everything over. Once it's gone forever.